As I look at new lore tabs that release with some of these episodes, sometimes I come across some that seem to be foreshadowing what's to come in, say, Frontiers. Most of them speak about guardians and allies venturing beyond Sol System, which not many have done before. That's actually kind of a cool little fact that most of the ships guardians have had in the past can't really travel that far. We've lost some of that really vital Golden Age tech, but now things are beginning to change with some help from characters like the Awoken and Dead Orbit. So while you listen to some of this lore, keep in mind we may see some of these characters in Frontiers, either in the new destination or perhaps just the lore. But if we don't, they're still cool stories and I wanted to share them anyway. We first begin with the new Mask of Fealty exotic helmet, where a Cabal named Gar leads Guardians on an adventure to go get rich, as he says. Gar's ex-Legion, ex-Cabal really if you're getting technical about it, but he still recognizes the tension that permeates the cargo hold, a mix of restlessness and nerves, like that of soldiers on their first real patrol. His new Lightbearer friends aren't green recruits. They're veterans of the end times, same as him, but he's had much longer to come to terms with his new independence. They're still braced for the Vanguard to come crashing in here, waiting for some 11th hour betrayal on his part. But it's a brand new world out here. The Lightbearers brought the goods, weapons, artifacts, enough to sell and enough to see them through whatever comes next. Gar's got the salvaged harvester, and Gar's got the plans. Alright, you dogs. Their grasp of Ulerant is abysmal, so he speaks their tongue. You've done your service to the Vanguard. Leave war to Hive gods and those that feed them. He looks down at them, his new crew. 3 human eager faces, 3 metal drones. They want to see the stars. They want a little taste of the better life. We've got ourselves a crew of 7 seasoned killers and a great big universe out there, Gar grunts. Let's go get rich. Gar and his guardians, and I'm assuming the drones are the ghosts, set out in this Cabal harvester to explore and find secrets. They bring weapons and artifacts to trade and sell along their way, perhaps for information of where to go next, things to find. They have enough to get them where they're going, which makes it seem like a far distance for me. Now this could be like any lore, just a story to throw out there, but to me it seems like a nod to Guardians traveling beyond Sol starting next year. It's not just us, it seems some other characters have the same idea. We next have the Zerf board lore, where more Guardians begin their trip with new ship technology from the Awoken, the Vanguard, and the Dead Orbit. This tale is interesting because we have sort of the opposite of the fealty card. There, Cabal and Guardians were basically freelancers, decided to leave and venture out on their own. In the Zerf board, it seems the Vanguard are in on this mission, perhaps wanting to find something beyond. In the new Zerf board lore, Guardians get a new ship with technology that allows them to travel further out. The ship's a spruced up galliot, glorious in its pearlescent blue paint and bizarre angles. Just looking at it makes Rahila want to take it on a joyride clear out of the Sol System. Walking up the gangway into the ship itself makes her want to cry. The ship has the necessary long-range capabilities and just enough expanded capacity for a full fire team's worth of supplies and survey equipment. Between the Vanguard support, generous contributions from the Awoken, and several upgrades courtesy of a lapsed Dead Orbit adherent, the ship's a lot to be entrusted with. These new sensors are something else, Isidro announces from the cockpit. If so much as a mouse sneezes out there in the black, we'll pick it up. Rahila squints at him. A mouse? Space mice, or, a gravitational anomaly, or mysterious freaky signals. Vanguard will be along in a few to see us off. Rosh 5's composed baritone emerges from the hatch leading to the cargo hold. You two ready? Rahila settles into the cockpit's chair. To go find out what's left of our solar system? Of course we are. Remember, Rosh intones gravely. This is pure recon, no big risks. Rahila and Isidro exchange grins. Sure thing. So the intriguing part is, where is this fire team going and what mission are they on? They're sort of scouting out beyond the solar system. The Vanguard helps them, they get generous contributions from the Awoken, and some upgrades courtesy of some Dead Orbit members. Since the Endless Night, the factions have sort of picked up and left the city, they're not really welcomed here anymore. But Dead Orbit, even before that, always had these ideals of wanting to leave Earth, that Earth itself was dying. I'm not sure if we really had any lore on Dead Orbit since their departure, but it makes me question where they decided to go. Are they still in the solar system? Are they someplace beyond, like in the new art we see?
Regrettably, Lakshmi was killed by Vex during the assault. It seems that the other faction leaders were culpable, if not responsible. Executor Hideo and Arak Jalal have fled, taking the remainder of their factions with them. In their absence, we are now one people, stronger, thanks to our alliance with the House Light.
The Dead Orbit part of it does intrigue me. We know Arak Jalal and his Dead Orbit faction, the sort of leader so to speak. But from that card it seems like it was someone on the lower end of the chain of command, sort of just pushing this information towards these Guardians. Now if you'd like to see another video about Dead Orbit and some theories about Frontiers, let me know in the comments, but I wanted to read the descriptions of a couple of old Destiny 2 weapons. These could just sort of reflect Dead Orbit's, philosophies, but I thought they were interesting. Once you see how the balance is tipped against us, once you see doom coming, inexorable and cold, then you must act. If we wish others to accept the grim reality, we must break through every comforting illusion. So were these just Dead Orbit's cries and pleas for the invading darkness and the witness they wanted to flee Earth, or was it something more? Most of these objects contained in the city are brought here due to the efforts of Ikora Rey's Hidden. This is the Vanguard spy network. We've seen some of their members in lore and cutscenes like Witch Queen's opening moments on Mars. It would be cool to interact with them on a deeper level, like face to face one day and speak to them, but for now they stay a mystery.
You want to be a hidden agent? There's only a couple of rules. Find thyself, know thyself, destroy thyself.
Season of the Deep alerted us that Oryx's remains were still alive to an extent and made their way beneath the oceans of Titan, where the Lucent Hive would attempt to revive him. The Guardian and Ikora's Hidden ventured down here and secured the remains. It's alive? Fenchurch whispers, hesitant to approach Oryx's remains. Chalco shakes her head. That's unclear. We need to bring back samples for further analysis. Ikora wants this entire site quarantined and the body exhumed, pending transport to a secure location for further analysis. So the Hidden went down and recovered the body of Oryx the Taken King after the Guardians went through the dungeon. They could have taken it somewhere else to study it, but it's assumed that it is being held in the last city. During the Golden Age, Maya Sundaresh and a team created the device, which used Vex Gateway technology to peer into other futures and possible timelines. Test subjects from this device went mad, and some of them even died, driven insane and committing suicide. After the collapse and the Dark Ages up to the City Age, the research team that first created this would become the future war cult. They found parts or plans from the original and were able to rebuild the device for continued use for their own needs. In Season of the Splicer, we witnessed Lakshmi's downfall. She said that through the device she's seen the last city in flames and our new Elixni allies were the cause.
The future war cult has long used Vex-derived technology to see into the future. I won't bore you with an explanation of mind forking. Suffice to say, we understand its dangers and use the device responsibly. I have glimpsed our future, Guardian, and what I saw was chilling. skies dark with smoke, shouting, gunfire, and in the center of it all, standing in our city, a group of fallen, the same fallen I saw earlier.
Lakshmi and the factions were destroyed or left Earth, and the whereabouts of the device are currently unknown. Though it was still in the city at that point, so unless somebody smuggled it out, that's where it remains. The Hive Crown of Sorrow was an artifact developed by Savathun. If it was put on a being, it was able to control their minds to an extent. Emperor Calus first found this thing on a Hive war moon. It was taken by his forces and later seen on the Glykon, meshing with the Egregore and trying to be used to contact the voice in the darkness. Here it was recovered by the Guardian and Osiris, or Savathun in Osiris's body, when they found it beneath Catabasis in the final room. Savathun then wanted to take it back to the city.
What monstrosity is this?
The Crown of Sorrow. A Hive artifact of devilish craftsmanship meant to subvert the wearer's will. I suspected it was the crown in question.
More Hive witchcraft. It should be destroyed.
It has been altered from its original design. Opened. Instead of controlling minds, it's meant to merge them. It is listening. We cannot leave the crown free.
You think you can contain it? So did Calus. How long before your audacity damns the city, advisor?
Your warning is noted, Empress, but this is Vanguard's space. Will you ensure the crown is undisturbed while I make preparations for its recovery?
The Cabal are not at your disposal. Do so at your own peril.
In the Eidolon gauntlets, Eris smuggles it out and brought it to the helm above Earth in Season of the Haunted. Eris Morn chalks the floor in the helm wing previously inhabited by the servitor of the Elixni Splicers. A liberated tomb ship drones beside her. Through the open, shielded hangar, the Leviathan is visible as a malformed knot, its shape bulging from the shadowed outline of the moon. Ikora descends the stairs. An ornately dressed warlock Thanatonaut follows, their robes trimmed in bone and elaborately stitched symbols. "Did you commandeer this from Mars?" Ikora asks with a smile, looking over the Hive vessel. Eris stands. It provided ample shielding for transporting the crown from its vault. "It's here now?" the Thanatonaut asks, breaking his stride at the bottom of the stairs. "Worry not. The helm will disembark from the city to ensure the crown is contained," Eris answers. So that's pretty cool and gives us some backstory to that season. The helm was still on Earth at that point, and Eris Morn took a tomb ship, smuggled the crown into the city, into the helm, and at the beginning of that season we can see the cutscene of the helm leaving the city and floating above the moon. After Season of the Haunted, I'm assuming the Vanguard still has this thing in containment somewhere to keep it out of enemy hands. Savathun turned into a Hive Lightbearer when her ghost Umaru rezzed her after Season of the Lost. After a big battle and chase throughout the throne world, the Guardian dealt the last blow while Savathun warned us about the Witness. Shortly after this scene, her body was taken by the Vanguard and hidden and brought to the last city.
She's dead, but her ghost got away.
Good enough. Hold your position. The Hidden are coming to secure the remains. Good work, Guardian. You did the right thing.
After this, Eris did an autopsy of sorts seen in the Eidolon helmet, which was also released in Season of the Haunted. Savathun is rigid and lifeless beneath the edge of Eris's scalpel as it begins a Y incision. With each careful removal of a chitin plate, she expects the Witch Queen's muscles to shudder, her eyes to roll open, her claws to cleave Eris in twain as retaliation. Rigid, lifeless, nothing to fear. Below the skull, protected by plated scale and fraying hive enchantment, Eris sees the symbol of the Witch Queen. She peels back muscle and shaves away surrounding tissue for a clearer view of the fading mark etched into Savathun's encephalon organ with Soulfire script. Only then does she see the embellishments adorning the mark. They bring to mind the runic symbols carved into the crown of sorrow. She catalogs the embellishments on the datapad, noting the similarities before continuing her examination, confident in her initial findings regarding a link to the crown. A link to the crown, a lock may have tried to pick. Now Eris holds the key from the mind of Savathun herself. There, Savathun would remain in the vaults of the city and the hidden until the events of Season of the Witch, when Guardians would need to bring back Savathun to learn how to enter the Traveler. Guardians have also been contained in the city, dangerous Guardians. Let's take Shayura for example. Shayura was a normal Guardian who ventured too far into the side of darkness. In the Trials of Osiris, she killed multiple Guardians, granting them their final death, even destroying their ghosts. At the time, she was using darkness and stasis to do this, which was very controversial, especially considering she killed the ghost too, so Shayura was kept in containment by the Vanguard. The lore card says Earth Last City Detention Facility. Her jump ship was full of dead ghosts. Some of them were just pieces. We haven't determined how many dead yet. Vanguard Security Report excerpt. Shayura escaped a time later and began to try and change her ways. A fun fact, the Titan scene being killed by the Witness in the Lightfall intro cinematic was a part of Shayura's fire team. Next to this character, I'm sure there's other important Guardians kept here in the city. So let's first start by stating the obvious here. The planets were removed a while back for a couple of reasons. The main reason most likely was the size of the game. The planets were put in the content vault, allowing for new content and experiences and lessening the size of Destiny 2 overall. I'm assuming Bungie then came up with a story reason that went along with it. The Witness and the Darkness took the planets away from us. So the reason they still might not be back development-wise is just that. They're in the content vault, things would need to be updated, and the game is much smaller without them. Maybe they return someday, maybe, but that's our answer currently. Lore-wise, now what actually happened with the planets? And now that the Witness is gone, could they make a return? Mars and Titan have returned to us since, so what about the others? This all started back around Season of the Worthy, when word of the Black Fleet's arrival would spread around the system. By word of mouth from civilians in the city. And in places like Golden Age Warmind vaults, the Guardian could witness the Black Fleet's position as it made its way further into the Sol system. At the end of arrivals, the Traveler would unleash a wave of light as the pyramids would halt above 4 of humanity's celestial bodies. Io, Titan, Mercury, and Mars were gone. Here's what Zavala told us.
People of the last city, humanity has endured a devastating blow. Vanguard scouts have confirmed that Io, Mars, Titan, and Mercury have disappeared. We don't know why. We have lost contact with Deputy Commander Sloan and Jensam Scribe Ashamir. We are deploying Guardians to all corners of the system to find answers. And with those answers, we will form a plan.
There's not much to tell. Mercury, Mars, Io, and Titan are gone.
So what exactly happened is still somewhat of a mystery, but in Immolent Part 1, the lore from Bungie.net, Osiris speaks about the planets that were taken. The orbital readings of souls' bodies are intact, gravity unaltered. But the system is gutted. 4 globes plucked from the skies. His eyes sink into the maw of eternal depth lurking in Io's place, an anomaly of darkness. Osiris stares as if looking into the pyre flames of a funeral, the corpse's uncanny familiarity, a stranger you half remember. There is only the gouge of Io's absence, a reckoning whispered and left. Saturn grieves the loss of Titan. The cerulean jewel that once was had sunken into the gullet of the abyss. In its place, an anomaly, dark and rimmed in gravitational lensing. Osiris tears his eyes away and fixate on its sibling cavity, a swath cut through Saturn's rings by Oryx's blade during the Taken War. Within the rings, the dreadnought sails in solidarity with the anomaly's orbit, whispering back in harmony. "Do you hear that?" Osiris asks, turning to Sagira. He turns the ship's scanning array toward the anomaly. Like the tones Vance described, from the spires and then the pyramids, it was coming from the anomaly that replaced Io as well. "I don't hear anything, but I can feel it." Sagira cringes and constricts her shell flaps, like a shiver down my metaphorical spine. Osiris lowers his gaze. He does not want to see their failure or believe the cradle's tree, the forest, all the Golden Age treasures so many had died to preserve were gone. All their victories usurped and meaningless in the face of the enemy. For all their power, all their heroism, they had invited this fate. And when it came, they were not prepared. Phobos and Deimos orbit the grave of Mars where a rolling depth festers, hungry and reaching out to the little moons caught within its influence. The Warmind buckled, and yet somehow it ekes out existence in hiding, a survivor again. So there's a little backstory on what exactly happened to the planets. It describes that Sol's bodies, these planets are still intact, their gravity unaltered, but they've sort of been plucked away, an anomaly of darkness in their place, this gravitational mass of darkness. The gravity unaltered, it makes sense because Phobos and Deimos still orbit this gravitational anomaly on Mars as if it was still there. To me, it seems like the Witness sort of just plucked them out of our reality to inspect them. And in fact, in Witch Queen, that's what we learned it was sort of doing with Mars. Searching through humanity's golden age and time fractures, possibly looking for information. Information likely on the Veil and where it was. The Veil went missing during the collapse and the Witness and Darkness pushed away, so it makes sense that the Golden Age could give them some answers.
So, it's not the darkness that's responsible for the planet's mass abduction, but an entity behind it. The Witness.
When Savathun was in Osiris's body, she also spoke about these darkness anomalies from the Glycon. I believe Keitel did as well.
It recounts a descent into the anomaly. Gravitational oscillations broke and reformed the Glycon many times over. It is as if every permutation of the ship's existence collided in one space.
In research logs, the entity's voice emanates from the grave of Mars. The Scorn babble to the void and attentively await response. Our Emperor's vision is at hand. Tomorrow we pierce the anomaly's veil. We are ready.
So in Witch Queen, Mars would return for that reason. In Savathun's Two Truths, Two Lies, she mentions that she returned Mars. Now I'm not sure if this was exactly confirmed, but we know the Witness took them away. I don't think we have confirmation on how Mars exactly returned, and same thing for Titan, which came back in Season of the Deep.
On Neptune, we learned that a key to defeating the Witness lies hidden away on Titan. Now we know why the Witness's fleet came there when it first arrived. Deputy Commander Sloan held the line on Titan to the bitter end, right up until the Witness took it. Then, we lost all contact. But now, just when we need it most, Titan has returned. And when it did, we were greeted with something we could have never predicted.
To any Guardians listening, this is Deputy Commander Sloan requesting emergency support.
Savathun also told us that we'll get the power to move worlds, which we kind of did in the Root of Nightmares raid, but you have to question if that's actually canon or not. So it's possible the Guardian was partly responsible for it. Maybe Asa had something to do with it when it comes to Titan, and even Xivu Arath's presence and darkness on that world. In the Final Shapes Entelechy lorebook from the Collector's Edition, there is some more lore that talks about how the Witness takes and analyzes these planets. The Noesis, a species that was destroyed by the Witness in this book, says this: planets stolen from space, ripe fruit plucked from orbit, structures dissected and reassembled by thousand-fingered hands, anchors and salves unraveled into first principles, sectioned into water-thin slices. So currently where we sit, Mars and Titan are back, but that leaves two that remain in Mercury and Io. In that same lore book, Ido said, "I understand that Mercury was a scorched wasteland before the Great Machine's arrival. When it had finished, humans could walk unprotected on its surface. What wonders the Great Machine can work. I can only hope that Mercury will return from the Witness's clutches, released as Titan was, so that I may see it for myself." So confirmation that Titan was returned from the Witness's clutches, but what about Mercury? The Witness is dead. Some of the memories and dead species, including the Witness itself, may exist in some of these echoes, but in my mind, nobody has current control over the planets. So it's either they can't be released because it's something only the Witness could do, or we're just waiting for somebody to learn how to do it. Again, it kind of circles back around to that gameplay development aspect of it. It would be cool to see Io return, but for what purpose? Sandbox-wise, they can change up the entire location, add new activities, maybe a revamped Pyramidian strike with Asher Mir's return. But there sort of has to be a reason we would go there, and with Frontiers coming out next year, it seems we're going to new places which most players want. So should the planets return, I don't know, but lore-wise, it definitely seems possible at this point. Let's first begin with the Osteo Striga. Osteo was created by a guardian named Yana 14. Yana was chosen to study the Thorn, a weapon of sorrow created from Hive magics, after Dredge and Yor began murdering innocent guardians with it. They first would test the weapon on live cattle. The first Thorn impact didn't kill the animals, but the extreme suffering afterwards did, which ended up halting their animal testing phase. At this point, Yana knew this wasn't any other piece of Hive technology. It was special in her eyes. During another incident, the Thorn they were using accidentally fired, killing a lightless researcher named Caro. Caro's last words before his death were, "I'm reborn." Despite the Vanguard's pushback, Yana conducted a secret autopsy and took tissue samples from Caro's body to study further. Yana began to get corrupted by long-term exposure to this Thorn, and she even orchestrated several more accidental discharges of the weapon to study the Thorn's effects on her own team. She called this process poetic and elegant. Yana eventually would leave or flee and the project was shut down, but she does still exist out there. Using this Thorn research, she crafted the Osteo Striga, a new submachine gun Hive weapon of sorrow. In its lore card, you can see how obsessed she really is, referring to the weapon as her own child. Yana is wanted by the Vanguard, and her weapon, or more likely copies of it kind of like Thorn, are now in Guardian hands. Speaking of hands, the next piece we have is the Caliban's hand, which belonged to the second ever Hunter Vanguard Caliban 8. Another little fun fact, the Hunters have had 8 Hunter Vanguard leaders, including Crow. As the story goes, Caliban sat at a table playing a game of cards. Next to him was the first Hunter Vanguard Tallulah Fairwind, and an older gentleman which was actually an Ahamkara, shapeshifting into human form. During the game, Tallulah placed her life on the line against the Ahamkara. Caliban begged her to not go through with this, but she did. So Caliban dealt the cards and Tallulah lost her life to the shape-shifting Ahamkara. The dealer of the cards, Caliban, then became the Hunter Vanguard. Caliban hated this role as most hunters do, In this exotics lore tab, we see he has a conversation with the speaker where he wants to leave, but the speaker says you need to gather up your hunters, you need to be a true leader here. We aren't exactly sure what happened to Caliban. He either died or he still lives. The lore never really specifies, but the hunter vanguard would change to others after him. Leaning back in his chair, he flipped a light-heated knife between his fingers and tossed it up to the ceiling. Its molten edge slid into the steel and instantly cooled, stuck alongside the other half-dozen blades he'd previously used to deface his office. It had been a slow afternoon. A light knock on his door caught his attention. An unassuming figure, robed and masked in white, stood at the entrance to the room. "Hard at work, I see," remarked the speaker. Caliban scoffed as he got to his feet. "Not sure what you expect me to do from behind a desk. You know how hunters are." The speaker nodded, then looked up to the ceiling. "How many knives do you have up your sleeve, Caliban?" "About that many," he joked, pointing upward. "Then it seems you must get up and collect them," the speaker mused, "much like your hunters." Caliban began to reply, but for once he didn't know what to say. The speaker turned from the doorway and called out over his shoulder. "Take your time, Caliban. The desk will be here still when you return." The Winterbite glaive is given to us on Neptune after we help Quinn Ligari in the Vex network and learn more about those original Cloud Striders. The text for this weapon first alerted us that there was an ally on Titan, which would turn out to be Asa in Season of the Deep. The backstory behind this weapon is quite strange though. During the collapse, an unknown entity attacked the hull of the Exodus Indigo colony ship, the one that would eventually crash land on Neomuna and contained most of those Ishtar researchers. The entity on the hull was described as being 3 meters tall. The crew fired a point defense cannon to its chest, which made it retreat. It didn't even kill the thing. But what the creature did leave behind was a spear, a glaive made of exotic matter, which interfered with sensors by amplifying and reflecting signals. Again, this was during the collapse, and whatever it wasn't Vex. So the best thing we can decipher is that it was something connected to the Witness. Perhaps a disciple of the Witness, maybe one we know like Nezarec, or one of the unknown disciples from previous lore books. It had to be something working on the side of the Black Fleet though. This glaive was then either taken or transported with the ship to Neomuna and likely altered with nanotech of the Cloud Striders, then gifted to your Guardian in the Lightfall expansion. Buried Bloodline is a crossbow sidearm that was originally created by the House of Wolves. The House of Kings would steal it a time later, and then it ended up in the hands of the undead Scorn leader Fikrul. In its lore tab, Fikrul gifts the weapon to his son Rathiel, the first boss you encounter in the Warlord's Ruin dungeon. He commands his son to go to Earth and reclaim the new Scorn created by the Ahamkara madness in an ancient warlord castle. So this weapon belongs to Fikrul and then his son. Rathiel enters the quarters of the Ketch's dead captain to see Fikrul gazing at the walls of bound tomes filled with a Lixni scrawl. Rathiel could not understand the contents of these books, but his father had learned much from them. With time, he would learn to unravel their secrets as well. "Father, you called me. We prepare to leave." Fikrul turns, a polished steel case in his lower arms. "I have one last gift for you." Fikrul opens the case to display a clean-looking weapon, a sleek bolt caster. Rathiel could still see its original design, twisted, broken, and refashioned into something stronger as he was. "Claimed from kings by wolves, modified, Scorn now, like us." I am honored, Rathiel says, gently lifting the weapon from its case and bowing. Fikru looks upon his son with pride. I send you to claim kings, as we once did as wolves. Carry our history with you. Claim it. Bring it home. Lastly, we come to the hazardous propulsion, which has a pretty funny story. In this exotic chess piece, we see the story of Failsafe during the events of the final shape. Failsafe was like, wait, the Guardians went inside the Traveler? At this moment, she felt left out, that she wasn't a part of this adventure. She was isolated and depressed. We can see some of the remnants of this in episode Echoes with her dialogue.
Captain, I've checked your messages for you. There are none. I know how that feels. So, I wrote you one myself. Dear current living captain, after the Cabal dropped a tank on Nessus, and you ignored me the whole time, I thought we had beef.
So what does she do? She activates a dormant 3D printer to design something to keep herself company and make herself feel useful. She scans several ideas but ends up creating rocket armor for the captain. Failsafe spins through the records of her rocket-like blueprints while the printer's hands work overtime to keep up. Something gets bedazzled with old solar panel shards and is quickly discarded. Got it! Rocket armor! Surely the captain won't harm themselves with this. It's the perfect solution. Just the right amount of danger and effectiveness. Surely the captain will appreciate this and request her presence on their mission inside the Traveler. The machine continues to print a variety of prototypes as she hums a tune she learned from Cade 6. She thinks about him sometimes. Maybe she would have made something with rockets for him too. Ever wonder who owns certain exotic weapons and armor pieces in the lore? Some of the very exotics you use daily have some incredible backstories that the average Destiny player would know nothing about. Today we dive through the backstories of 5 Destiny exotics and discuss how they were created. Liar's Handshake belonged to a Dark Age lightbearer named Thalia. As the story goes, Drifter had a crew during the Dark Age and they planned a heist to steal from another warlord named the Wake. The cool part was that Thalia was a different type of Risen. She would use guns from time to time, but she instead usually vowed for the silent stealth assassin approach. While Otto and I finish up inside, Thalia covers the lookout. He's a thin, quick shadow, this lookout, and he watches every angle. He listens for every sound. He's on his toes, ready to throw up the alarm the second he sees one little thing out of place. Guy like that sees everything, but he doesn't see Thalia. She comes out of the shadows like a ghost, but steps full into the light, because now she wants to be seen. She waits a second too long for my liking, gives him too much breathing room between the reveal and her first punch. But I shouldn't doubt her. He doesn't even have time to bring up his hands. He's fast, but she's faster. She throws herself into every punch like it's her last, dodges and ducks his blows like a dancer. Scariest of all, she bares her teeth in this nasty smile while she does it. Doesn't make a sound. So that's the last thing the lookout sees, her silent, grinning face, as her cross counter reveals a hidden knife that slides smoothly into the soft flesh under his chin. Never touches a gun, that girl. She likes to get close, likes to look right in their eyes and be the last thing they see. Thalia lets him drop, wipes her knife clean on her sleeve, and raises her hand for Aaron. Go, man, go. The Chromatic Fire Warlock chess piece belonged to a warlock named Gia. Gia was an interesting character as she was dubbed a conspiracy theorist of sorts among other guardians. She tells others that these crystals you see on the chess piece originated from Dione, a moon of Saturn in a place called the Crystal Orchards. Found them, Crystal Orchards of Dione. Requesting backup, coordinates to follow. Last transmission of Fireteam Pergament. It was Wenjia who told me. At first, I didn't believe her. I mean, it's Wenjia. She believes in moon fairies and the continent of Antarctica. But she showed me the crystals. I examined the lattices myself. The crystals hold no natural attunement to any one fundamental force, but when exposed, achieve perfect fundamental force conduction. She told me she got them from a trader at the 7 Stars, a bar in the city, who got them from a hunter, who got them from a frame, who was programmed by a family in the Umbral district who had passed down the crystals as family heirlooms for generations, who'd been given the crystals by a guardian back in the Dark Age in exchange for a home-cooked meal. The name Pergament never turned up, but where else could these crystals have come from but the orchards of Dione? Another cool fact, there's also a finisher in-game called the Palm of Wenjia. Citan's Ramparts. Citan was a ruthless warlord during the Dark Age. He had his own stronghold like most warlords did. During a cold winter in Old Russia, the citizens whom Citan would watch over were fed up. They were cold, starving, and dying, so they began to storm his great hall. The thing is, Citan let them in, but said that they would have to go through him personally. In a display of utter dominance, Citan allowed the doors to open, personally standing between his people and the warmth and comfort of his hall. My home is open to any with the will to earn it. You only need get past me. His hand sparked with arc light. Out of desperation, one brave soul made a meager attempt to dart past the towering warlord. His nose barely passed the threshold before he was instantly disintegrated by a fist of havoc. Anyone else? Citan was later killed by Felwinter after he refused to join the Iron Lords. Felwinter crushed Citan's helmet and then shattered his ghost to pieces. Duality was a weapon given to Crow by the Spider during Season of the Hunt. This was when the newly risen Crow worked for the Spider. Crow was sent out into the Tangled Shore to find missing Spider associates, when he encountered the Wrathborn Elixni of Xivu Arath's forces. In the lore, this was Crow's weapon, and later lent to the Guardians to help in these Wrathborn hunts. The Wrathborn came upon the Cryptolith. They were distraught, ranting. Their fury was rising. They lifted their voices in harsh clicking speech and tore at the ground around the lure with their otherworldly power. One passed Crow's perch, and he could see it. Cloudy eyes, slavering jaws, an aura of wrath shimmering around it like a heated haze. It charged toward the rest, and its rhythmic howls of rage joined theirs. "They're chanting," Glint whispered, his curiosity forcing him to peek at the growing horde. "The syntax is garbled, but I could translate." "Don't," Crow said. "Please." He looked down the sights of his weapon and started his work. The Eyes of Tomorrow rocket launcher was developed by Clovis Bray. It can track to targets and was tested in a pretty brutal way, sacrificing exos and humans to the Vex to do so. Test subject successfully through the portal. Direct feed is live. Multiple hostiles detected. There are so many of them. The Vex numbers are incalculable currently. Well, what are we waiting for? Launch the artillery. Targets acquired. Weapons free. How many targets are being tracked? 4. That's not enough. Fire now. Test subject is under heavy resistance. Exo chassis receiving heavy damage. Fire now. Projectiles 1 and 2 dispatched. 2 confirmed hits. Sir, the torch hammers are melting Sergeant Traor. Request retrieval. Denied. Fire 3 and 4. The left arm has been severed. He's incapable of action. Request retrieval. Denied. Use the right arm. Where's the feed? Test subject offline. Feed lost. For the love of... Do you see the cost of hesitation, of cowardice? No matter. This is the price of advancement. The test subject was able to target multiple threats successfully, but was simply unable to execute commands fast enough. The next hurdle requires a mechanism capable of housing projectiles for simultaneous fire that's lightweight enough for individual operation. I'll get this report to R&D ASAP. Tell them I expect to see an operational prototype by week's end. Copy. Requesting retrieval of the remains, sir. Denied. I will not allow the facility to be compromised or our portal to be breached. We'll double our defenses here and continue to send Exos through to fight the Vex on their front until we get this right. So as you can see, Clovis Bray was testing this new Eyes of Tomorrow weapon with this Exo, and the Exo suffered catastrophic failure. Clovis Bray clearly didn't care what was going on or what happened. When the trailer released for Vesper's Host, it appeared that time would have a part to play. The trailer plays through certain events and then rewinds near the end to the start, so we're like, hey, maybe there's some time travel mechanics sending us back to different areas as if it's part of an encounter. Turns out this was really just an effect to symbolize the looping distress call coming from the vessel itself. But it made me think more deeply about Clovis Bray's corporation and time travel. Vesper Station was built by said corporation, and lore of what we know happened here post Deepstone Crypt Morningstar collision is very strange. On the station, Clovis had Vex experiments we know about. He wanted to control a Vex mine, experiment on powerful Vex subjects possibly taken from Europa. Now we don't know if these are some of the Vex we've encountered or ones taken from Volantis. It's implied though that this powerful Vex may have been made into an AI, and that when this Deepstone Crypt collision happened, it jumped host to the body of Atrax or something familiar. There are locations early in the dungeon here where you can see where this Vex subject broke out of containment. I passed this room tons of times and never really slowed down to give it a look. But you can see 4 sort of containment vessels in the center, and one of them is destroyed, this corruption and wire infection reaching out to the rest of the ship. Vex deal with aspects of time travel. Elsie experienced a time loop. Clovis Bray actually traveled far into the future. So this video will discuss a couple of different aspects, Bray's use of Vex tech and time travel, and the Vex entity that was on board Vesper Station and the infection that broke out because of it. So time travel, how did Clovis Bray do it? The No Time to Explain lore card says this. Navarro's timeline analysis indicates the weapon is the fabled Exo-Stranger's rifle, enhanced at a future point in this continuity, and then sent back to this present. On Europa, late Golden Age, deep inside a secret lab. Which window? 3025, Dr. Bray. I thought we'd run out of possibilities there. We had, and then this new one had popped up. Austin 1, how is that possible? We don't know. We still don't understand how any of this works. It's highly volatile and uncontrolled. Have we pinpointed the weapon's exact location? More or less. LC1 is supposed to attempt retrieval tonight. We can't risk the window closing before then. I'll be going this time. But last time those things in the sky almost killed you. And now I know how they work. That's half the battle. The old man gears up and enters a strange metallic pod made from Vex parts. Austin 1 stands at a distance from the pod, typing April 10th, 3025 into a console. Alright, Dr. Bray, you're a go in 3, 2, 1. A burst of light. An icy wasteland. What stood pristine moments prior is now dark, old, and falling apart as if centuries have passed. Clovis wades through the wreckage and comes to a frozen, deserted battlefield littered with human, exo, vex, and alien bodies. He reaches down and brushes snow from one of the alien bodies, lifting one of its many arms. Fascinating. A piercing whir emanates from somewhere in the distance. Clovis looks up and sees a black and red ship floating in the air. It stops above the battlefield and emits a bright red light, scanning the area as if searching for something. Clovis slowly pulls a device from his pocket. He presses a green button and the screen lights up, showing a blinking dot a few yards away, very close to where the ship itself now searches. He grabs a dead exo and opens a panel on its arm, tinkering before closing it with care. He quickly sneaks away, and in seconds the exo explodes, drawing the attention of the ship. He sprints across the battlefield toward where it was searching only moments ago. Using his device again, Clovis scans the ground until the blinking light goes solid. He digs into the snow until he hits something. He pulls it up halfway, a rifle shining like new, etched only with one word: now. Clovis attempts to fully free the weapon, but it's stuck, attached to something. He pulls harder, revealing an entire dead exo, hand-wrapped tightly around the grip. He takes a good look at its face and gasps. Elizabeth? The whirring sound reaches Clovis's ears again, pulling him out of his stupor. The ship heads right towards him. Clovis pries the gun from Elsie's right hand and sprints back the way he came, diving into his pod and activating it just as the ship fires on him. A burst of light. You could have been killed, says a familiar voice. Instead, I got you a gift, Elizabeth, Clovis responds, catching his breath and dusting himself off. One down, an infinite number left to go. It better have been worth it. He looks into her eyes and musters a half-hearted smile. We'll make it so. So Clovis enters a pod made from Vex technology to travel into the future. There he finds a bunch of dead humans, exos, and he also describes aliens with many arms, which could be fallen or something completely new. There's also a red ship that's sort of following him around the area with a red light. Could this be something like a Thresher? Maybe it could be another alien ship. Elsie and Clovis are clearly entangled in some type of time travel mystery. At the end there, I believe it's Elsie who says one down and an infinite number left to go. So it seems like they're working together to traverse these timelines and find something. Clovis went into the future and acquired Elsie's rifle, which was upgraded and brought it back. This was backed by Navarro in the card, who was a member of the Future War Cult alongside Lakshmi back in the day, and used what was called the device to peer into many timelines.
The Future War Cult has long used Vex-derived technology to see into the future. I won't bore you with an explanation of mind forking. Suffice to say, we understand its dangers and use the device responsibly. I have glimpsed our future, Guardian, and what I saw was chilling.
Next to Clovis, we also know Elsie has been stuck in her own time loop. It hasn't been fully addressed or closed up to this point, but we know the Guardian was a big difference, helping her connect with Anna, teaching us stasis, and I hope Bungie addresses it at some point, but it makes you wonder what the heck is going on here. The Vex have been heavily involved in multiple corporation projects. Ishtar and Bray, they made a Vexish AI in Soteria, weapons, and used radiolaria to create exos. Elsie, when she was on Mars in the Warmind lore days, was known to be in contact with someone from Venus in regards to Vex technology. This was likely Maya Sundaresh, and from this knowledge she was able to create the Worldline Zero sword.
My sister Elsie seemed to love this place. I wish we could see more of the machine she built. They sound incredible.
21 days until divergence. A brilliant classmate I met at the Physics Fellowship in Delhi took a job on Venus to continue her research. Twice a year, we exchange encrypted transmissions to share ideas, for it's a silly notion to lay claim to shared human knowledge. Ishtar Academy materials are forbidden on Mars, but I avail myself of any opportunity to push myself to the next peak. If I can get my hands on a Vex core, there's no telling how far I could push Bray engineering. 12 days until divergence. Jumping into an Einstein-Rosen bridge to travel in time has long been regarded fantasy by serious physicists. But what if there existed a computer so powerful it could indistinguishably simulate an entire alternate timeline? Based on my early research, this is a possibility of Vex technology. The key question would be whether one could take knowledge from a simulated timeline and alter the original. One step at a time, though. An Einstein-Rosen bridge is a tunnel in space that allows for travel across vast distances in space-time, essentially time traveling. So it's unknown if Vesper Station specifically had to do with time travel, but there was a Vex unit here and some sinister influence for sure. It's implied that this Vex unit broke out and the infection began. The Vex unit that broke out was labeled as biomechanical, so part machine, part living organism. This makes it sound like Clovis somehow found something strange and tried to fuse it with Vex. Is it something we know about? Is it something from futures he's visited?
Corrupted biomechanical subject has jumped to a new host. Did he breach containment?
But something had to trigger the infection, right? Either the Vex unit itself, which is unlike anything we've seen, or something that took control of it from elsewhere. The Lodi entity we've talked about is lost and far away from home. It seems to be sending this message to whomever through the anomaly. It says it's sort of sick or corrupted in a sense. It's trying to return home or alert home. Personally, I don't think we are done with the Vex, and they may have a connection to whatever Lodi is. Either it is part Vex or AI like Soteria for example, or it knows how to use this tech to its advantage. It exists in an incomprehensible space, so what if this space is in another timeline? So there's a new lore book called The Garden Way available in Destiny 2 Revenant. If you go through Ido's tonics and quests, you'll be able to play some of the missions and unlock these lore cards. In the last couple of days we've been diving through this and discussed the entire lore book in that video. And I gotta be honest, I think it's one of my favorites personally. It really gives you depictions of what Riis looked like. We had some clues from before, but now it goes way more in depth, so we'll talk about that a bit. But let's first start with these Slayer Barons. The Slayer Barons had tamed Riis back when it grew wild and disordered in the first century of the Great Machine's ether floor. First was Riis, and then the moons beyond our sky, which were often hostile to us. Within the hatchling schools, the Minders showed us these shadow stories of cunning hunters, adepts of the Great Machine, working in tandem to bring down the biggest monsters of their age. Slayer Barons were essentially Eliksni-bound hunters and monster slayers. They would enter the uncharted lands of Riis and eventually its moons to clear out ancient creatures and hostile threats. From the new lore card, we know one of these creatures was a darkness-infused swamp monster, so who knows what else they encountered. Maybe they killed some worm gods as seen or maybe hinted at in some cutscenes. Slayer Barons have their own armor, and the one from the lore book specifically said that they wore a void black cloak and a pythahide crest. The absence of a house symbol marked her as a Baron of the Order of Slayers. So this was another big point. The Slayer Barons weren't a part of any house. They were their own pack and would roam and complete whatever task was needed for their species. They existed for the good of everybody and didn't take sides, kind of reminded me of the Mandalorians in some ways. Karaskis from that lore book goes to the Palace of Judgment and meets the Kell of Stone, Chelchis. and it's here where she takes out an order to hunt down this creature that's harming an Elixni's farmland. We Slayers were never lords. We had no kells. We came together to defend our people. We were barons of Riis in the Great Machine, not this house or that. These fierce warriors had many tools at their disposal, weapons and the old Elixni knowledge to craft tonics. Behind me, I heard the whine and snap of arc energy. I turned to see Karaskis draw a short rod from the lining of her cloak. In her hands, it drew apart into a thin spear, crackling with power, and this she threw into the dark heart of the thing that hung suspended in the rift. Slayer Barons used what's called an apothecary satchel. This is given to you at the start of Revenant, so you can craft your own tonics and magics in this new artifact. The original Barons used apothecary mixers such as this one to brew eclectic medicines. We'll leverage similar tonics as combat and utility enhancements in the field. Before the Whirlwind, there were 7 Elixni Scholia that informed tonic creation: Innervation, Conduction, Effervescence, Tenacity, Vigor, Euthermia, and Cognition, all of which will be useful to us as battlefield treatments, provided I can get your help with fieldwork and experimentation. Don't worry, I'm certain we can modernize these tonics to affect just your guardian abilities and not your physiology. Mostly certain, we'll need every advantage we can find. Fikrul's actions on Europa have made clear that he sees our people as transgressions, no matter the house, whether we are friends of humanity or not. Distress calls from Elixni enclaves across the system are flooding public frequencies. I implore you to win this war, not to fulfill a prophecy or secure a title for my father to prevent our extinction. The Garden Way book spoke of several of these different tonics that were used. The first one is called Sunsoak Root. It says Karaskis stank strongly of seagrass and sunsoak root. I took care to sit toward the front of the watercraft, but the odor wrestled powerfully against the wind. I was quick to obey, noting the odor of sunsoak root that clung to the liquid. I hoped this first taste of a Slayer's tonic would fill me with strength or make me grow as if I've molted 5 times over. I could not smell anything but Karaskis. I followed her as she stepped nimbly across one of the sluices and onto the rich, loamy soil that marked the wildest part of Haxus's property. It was around this time that I started to feel the tonic's effects. I saw light, a tiny luminescence at the edge of my sight. I turned to watch it drifting slowly toward the ground, and by the time it landed, I could see more motes gathered over the undergrowth in the clouds, like dust. Far above, I read the flow of ether like a river through the sky. I set my bags down, looked at my hands, and saw a glow beneath my shell, as if the tonic had illuminated me from the inside out. But it was not just me. I looked at Karaskis and saw light. The push-pull of air through spiracles, the misting of expelled ether, the fervent radiance of her eyes. She had stilled to observe me, and now she spoke. The light is in all things. We cannot control it, but we can entice it. Draw it close. Another line speaks of other tonics. It says, Tenar, Brask, and Lisak, which expelled as purgatives, and which burned through chitin and stone alike. We know from the book as well, a potion or tonic rather called the Stone Eater tonic was used and embedded into the darkness creature they were fighting, and it ate away at its flesh. So in Revenant, Ido is attempting to craft tonics like these in the old Elixni Slayer Baron ways, but she doesn't have all the info she needs yet, and is failing to reverse the curse consuming her father. You can imagine though that with unique tonics like these seen in the lore book back on Riis, I'm sure something would be able to help Mithrax if we just figure out a way of how to get the ingredients and how to craft it, right? We've also got some great descriptions of Riis itself, further than what we've had in the past. Here's a quote from Varix a time ago. What have you heard of my first home? We say there were buildings that touched a forest green sky, winding paths through gardens of smoke. Beautiful storms that left a gold shimmer on our streets. Truth or rumors, Varix will not say. I give my homeworld to the legends. Riis was said to have had carefully tended lakes and rivers, with fields of lush iridescent crops and groves of starkly colored trees. The sky was also described to be a light pink color. In the new lore card, as the Slayer Baron and their apprentice are going to find the creature, they travel through Riis by watercraft. And they speak of many different areas they went through, sprawling residential districts that turned and cut toward the listing sun. Crowds thinned as they went by canal-side markets that gave way to orderly arrays of residential towers and aerial traffic. Then to radiating lines of transport arterials, waterways, and roads, connecting each of Riis's great cities to one another in a shimmering network. They passed the site where the Great Machine first visited Riis. They called it the hill at the heart of Riis Athlodri. Now this image here is an illustration stock image from Shutterstock, but I was looking for something to give you an image of what this might have looked like. It's really cool to at least get these descriptions though, and close your eyes and imagine what a place like this would look like. We've been with the Elixni for a long time, both as enemies and now some of them allies, and it would be really cool to get some actual concepts or maybe even visit this world someday. Of course, the Whirlwind, their own collapse happened, but maybe it's like a throwback or prequel type thing. Most of the Elixni we encounter now are broken and long for those previous former days of their luscious planet and moons. Farms were also super important in Elixni culture, and shanks were originally used to tend to those crops, thousands of them dispersed over a single farm field to manage and maintain the area. Zerf. He was one of the most interesting characters in Destiny 1. The Nine weren't really a part of the game's story at all aside from lore and his in-game dialogue. He had many strange lines, but one always stood out to me. It was, "Your traveler has a dark mirror." I remember thinking, does that mean there's another traveler? Or is the traveler we know actually evil, like all the fan theories suggested? Fast forward to Lightfall and Zerf was right. The Veil is the Traveler's dark mirror.
The Traveler's power runs parallel to the forces of nature. Gravity, magnetism, sound, light. The Veil does this too. It is synchronized with the Traveler. Wherever the Traveler came from, the Veil may have as well.
So the Nine clearly had some knowledge on the Veil if we're counting this as canon. And that myth from times past many years ago in the Destiny 1 tower was actually true. Speaking of the Nine themselves, they were also a big question mark and mystery. I mean, they still are to some extent. We haven't seen them in a while, but Destiny 2 introduced a ton of information on them. 2 emissaries that speak to the Guardians and humans, trials of the Nine, the Reckoning, and even lore books that explained what the Nine actually were. We no longer had to wonder who the tentacle-faced guy with some random exotics was and why he was even in our tower in the first place. Around the time of Rise of Iron, there were leaked images of a supposed new exotic called the Dubious Volley. This thing looked pretty crazy, like nothing we'd ever seen before in Destiny, a strange-looking exotic that was maybe a rocket launcher. Players thought this must have been a weapon for Destiny 1 and perhaps Rise of Iron. Maybe some of the final updates we had, like the April update. But as time went on, that never happened and we never saw this thing in-game. And if you played Destiny 2, you would know that as it turns out this was in development for that game and was in fact the Wardcliff Coil. We heard about the collapse very early on in Destiny 1, but we didn't know what it meant. What happened? Who even attacked us? The legends were told, but the Guardian was lost in the dark. You would kinda think characters like Zavala and Mara would remember the pyramid ships, right? Be able to explain what happened to Earth with the Witness and Savathun and these disciples, yet they didn't explain anything.
I could tell you of the power of the darkness, its ancient enemy.
Now, development-wise, it was likely because Bungie hadn't unfolded the story that far yet, but there were already some hints in-game. Pyramid ship concept art on the install screen, and pyramid imagery around the tower. The myths of the pyramids and the Black Fleet would become reality in Destiny 2, and of course, in the final shape.
What have we found? Every moment we hesitate, the darkness comes closer. You must act.
It's good to see you alive, Guardian. I was wondering.
Questions requiring still more answers.
Destiny 2's campaign brought us to Titan and revealed that a giant worm-like creature was beneath the oceans, swimming around near the arcology. At first, players thought, whoa, is this a hive worm god, or maybe Oryx's worm after the Taken King? This creature was even visible on the surface above the waves. Turns out this was actually something. The myth of the worm creature would be Asa from Season of the Deep. Asa is related to the worm gods in that worm proto-species, and she might return in Heresy in February.
You don't understand. That distress call wasn't for me. It was for her.
Early lore told us about Exos, their mysterious creation and the horrors they went through, like trying to reach an obsidian tower in their dreams, where they'd have to kill everyone they knew to reach it, or try to. The myths of the Exos in Destiny 2's story in Forsaken began to unfold further. Cade explaining that something was on Enceladus which turned out to be Europa, and the long, slow whisper, some shady stuff surrounding Clovis Bray's corporation and the creation of Exos. Beyond Light made this myth a reality, and further expansions explained more. We visited part of the crypt, learned that there were Exo backups here, and even Exo challenged trials that kinda resembled the same structures from early Exo dreams. The crypt itself was always there, but to us new players, this place seemed like a myth and had so much mystery around it. Wish Dragons, need I say less? Destiny 1 told us about mysterious dragons that granted wishes and were all hunted to extinction. Forsaken introduced us to one in Riven, and we witnessed how terrifying these wishes could be, unleashing this dark cycle upon the dreaming city. Season of the Wish showed us Riven's return with the realization that there were other eggs that we were able to find and collect. Marasov has them in her possession and they could be used for future stories.
In aiding Riven's clutch, you've averted the annihilation of an entire species. Provided a chance for her children to choose their own paths. We'll be there to guide them, should they require it.
Nezarec Sin. From the very early days of Destiny 2, this lore card made us go crazy. Was Nezarec a big bad god of darkness or just a character in the lore? Nezarec was a myth for years until Bungie decided to actually do something with this character. And hints began to pop up in the year of the Witch Queen expansion, exotics that contain the disciple within. The fourth tomb of Nezarec, pyramid ships on the moon and his return in Lightfall.
Finally. What was that? Such a fragile space. This will do.
Despite Nezarec's death in the raid, there's still even more hints of his possible return. And if not his return personally, the power he used in Nightmare Power, which one day might be ours.
Harris wrote extensive documentation on nightmares after her last encounter with them. She and I believe that they are a yet untapped power of the darkness.
Here's a fun one. Destiny 1 players discovered a loot cave in the Cosmodrome of Skywatch. Players would stand in one spot for hours and shoot into the cave to collect pools of engrams and loot. The myth of the loot cave was added into the game as an Easter egg where 1,000,000 deaths weren't enough for Master Rahul, a story told throughout the tower.
A million deaths are not enough for Master Rahul.
This was then eventually embraced even further as a dungeon in Destiny 2, where you would start in the same Skywatch location and kill enemies constantly to enter the dungeon itself from this cave. Early lore had us wonder if there was a leader behind the darkness and these strange pyramid ships. Or was each ship controlled by its own enemy? Gardener and Winnower lore from around the time of Shadowkeep had us question if the Winnower could have been this entity overall. But as time went on and we learned more about the Traveler's ancient enemy, it was revealed to be the Witness, an ancient creature behind the Pyramid Fleet, and it wanted revenge.
The universe makes us all victim and perpetrator. That's infinite cruelty. Be free.
So a couple of weeks ago we talked about Destiny myths that came true. Things fans could only dream of, like the inside of the Traveler. We actually went there in the final shape. Today's video is going to be the complete opposite, some crazy myths and conspiracy theories in Destiny that fans thought about but weren't actually true. Let's first start with the Traveler being evil. Remember the early days of Destiny 1? We were introduced to an alien sphere hanging in Earth's orbit that granted magic power. It didn't speak though, it just sat there and was dormant, suffering after the events of the collapse. As we learned about the game through trailers and eventually made our way through the story ourselves, theories began to emerge. Wait a minute, maybe the Traveler is actually the evil one, and maybe someday we'll see it turn on the Guardians and humanity. At the time, there were a couple of different reasons for this line of thinking. The Traveler was dormant and didn't speak to us. It left other civilizations in ruin, and it had a strange speaker in our tower that wouldn't really tell us anything.
I am the one who speaks for the Traveler. You must have no end of questions, Guardian.
There were even fan theories that suggested Destiny's original story was much different, and that the Traveler and darkness weren't separate, but the Traveler instead created the darkness and caused all this destruction. 10 years later, we can see this is definitely not the case. Light and dark are neutral forces in the universe, but beings wield them for their own goals. Like the Guardians, like the Witness. Overall, the Traveler is a good entity. It wants the creation of life, it's a gardener. And once it creates life and seeds it, it lets that life make its own decisions and does not speak for it. So I guess it depends on who you ask, like the Witness. The Traveler is evil to it and its species, but the Traveler itself is clearly not evil. During the Forsaken expansion, we witnessed the curse unleashed upon the Dreaming City.
I should have known that Riven would grant one last wish. One last curse. Now the Dreaming City has been taken.
During the same expansion, we got a lore book that was called Truth to Power. It was quite strange and had some interesting lore to say the least. One entry though, called Act, Choose, React, had some strange text which led players on a quest for themselves for over a year. You bring Medusa before Rahul. Ah, he sniffs. Another battle trophy. Pre-collapse, post-foreboding, a covert intelligence designed to watch over a high-risk colony mission. Allow me to decrypt her for you. He issues you several tokens, a rare quality fusion rifle, a shader, and a letter. The letter reads, achieve light level 999 and defeat Dull and Karu in a one-person fire team to unlock the true ending of the Dreaming City. At the time this lore book came out, the power cap was 600. Yeah, throwback, right? So 999 power wasn't yet possible. Fast forward a year later though, with Shadowkeep, the cap was raised to 960 and Guardians could progress further, getting their light levels even higher. This was the first time you were able to reach 999 power. So for a full year, theories flowed through Reddit and tons of articles were made. Will the Dreaming City curse actually end if you beat this in a solo dungeon? Guardian Bagel 4K was the first to solo Shattered Throne at 999 power, but nothing happened. The curse wasn't broken, no reward. It seems the Witch Queen had played her tricks on the community once again. Savathun even breaking the fourth wall and having messages to share with the community and Bagel. I am Savathun, ravenous. I have set the snare and baited the trap. I am the finality, the reward. I am the true ending. Is victory so easy, hero? Truth to Power was just a device of Savathun to generate more trickery and cunning, leading players in a random chase for over a year. Ghost Fragment Rasputin 5 from Destiny 1 said this. If available ISR and Warwatch indicates imminent Traveler departure, then Traveler departure compromises human, neo-human survival and Epoch strategy. Stand by for Abhorrent Imperative. Activate Loki Crown. Perform Deniable Authorization. Full Catametric and Noetic Release. Prevent Traveler departure by any means available. Stand by for Effect Assessment Criteria. Coerce pseudo-altruistic Traveler defense action. Defer civilization kill. Stop. This card from Destiny 1 suggested that Rasputin had some protocols to prevent the Traveler from leaving Earth if it decided to flee, or to destroy it completely. Fan theories believe that Rasputin did fire and kept the Traveler here on Earth, the only reason it was dormant and stayed on the planet at all. Maybe Rasputin was the one who wounded the Traveler. But it turns out this is not the case at all, and like the lore card sort of hints at, it didn't really happen. Season of the Seraph cleared this up even further, with Rasputin himself telling us what happened.
When the collapse began, I feared the Traveler would abandon Earth. So, I reactivated the protocol to use the war sats against it. I intended to immobilize the Traveler, to force it to stay. But in the end, I aborted the firing sequence. Anna does not remember this, but it was she who convinced me to stop.
The next one bothers some lore fans and they choose to believe what they wish instead because it's more fun. Early lore in D2 hinted that Shaxx and Marasov may have had some feelings for each other. Shaxx spoke to Eva Levante during the Dawning about gifting Marasov a bow. Then of course the infamous entry where the two spoke together and the helmet stayed on. Many were led to believe that Mara and Shaxx were two lovebirds drifting between the city and the reef, sharing in each other's company from time to time. I mean, some of this lore even came out during Crimson Days, Destiny's Valentine's Day event. Witch Queen Collector's Edition lore addressed this topic even further, and completely switched things around. Turns out the two were just bonding over Seer Ido, the former Queen's Wrath, Mara's lover, and Shaxx's great friend. They spoke about awoken stories, myths, and legends together. And Mara wanted to see Shaxx's eyes, the same eyes that laid upon Seer Ido, but the helmet stayed on. So Bungie switched things around, but personally I think Shaxx had feelings for Mara at least at some point. I remember this next one clearly, and I probably even made some crazy theory videos on it in the early days too. During the Dark Below, Eris Morn popped up in the tower, except she didn't look like a normal guardian. She had hive eyes. And it also didn't help that every time we had to deal with the hive, Eris Morn was right there in front of your face and seemed to have secret knowledge on the subject. The thought was, maybe Eris Morn is actually Savathun. There were hints early on that we could meet the Witch Queen one day. Was she in front of our face this whole time? While the answer turned out to be no, Savathun did impersonate someone else for a while in Osiris, which I guess is close enough. Today's video focuses on the Cabal booklet from the Lightfall Collector's Edition. I'll have 2 other videos up on the channel. The Osiris one is already up and the Stranger one is coming soon. Check the description for those links if you'd like to watch those. We've known the history of the Cabal and its empire from the Red War days, but this booklet goes further in depth and gives us some more facts that we never knew about. In this first entry, we see Calus speaking to his second wife, not Kaido's mother. Kaido watches this and Calus releases her children, decides not to take them in. Kaido is 3 years old. Nearby, the woman bellows in his chambers. She says he has not kept his political promises to the expatriate families that approved of their match. He is so wounded, he says. Doesn't his luscious body delight her? Doesn't the right to fill his pouches with her young bring her joy? She says she is not sexist, and this is not the era of lead. She worries about policy and external security, not his lusciousness. He complains that she does not make him happy. She says there is more to life than happiness. He disagrees. She calls him weak. He calls her a curse and a killer. She roars and strikes him. I gasp into the floor. It is the first time I've ever heard my father in pain. The guards are very still. Then there is a terrible sound. I am too young to understand it as the sound of father opening his brood pouches. I do not want them anymore, my father the Emperor says, quite softly. If you cannot love me, then how could they? You can find another male with open pouches, some barracks beau. But be sure I never know him. I will not have my blows. The large tusked woman screams in rage. She stampedes out past the guards, past me. Her hands are full of little things. So 1, that's kind of disgusting, and 2, we learn how these Cabal grow up. The males are the ones who raise them, and Kaido watches on as her father and her stepmother have a fight, and Calus releases her children, says, take them somewhere else, I'm not going to raise them. You don't love me, so I will not love them. Throughout the Cabal booklet, there's many descriptions of Cabal and how their bodies work. This is one of those examples. Our next story is when Umoon and Kaido speak. Kaido learns about the Oxa machine and her name Kaido, how Calus named her after a star. Umoon explains her name in Arath. Kaido is 35. She returns to her palace after her first deployment. Calus throws a celebration party for Kaido's return with fruit, fireworks, and a massive gathering. Kaido leaves the party for a moment and drinks in the ballroom. Umoon approaches. Your name is a prayer for war, the Evocid general says. I snap to attention. She laughs at me and offers a small harpoon of canapes in a cocktail with middling-sized shrub. I decline, and she tisks. You should enjoy yourself. It is your party, although we both know it is his party. My father named me for a star, I say. Nothing to do with war. Yes, but the star Kaido was named for a myth, not an old homeworld myth either. A myth from the age of sails, when we conquered the stars. Surely you know it, assuming that you've been briefed on the Oxa. The Adel Zenitaph and Archive, sometimes OXTA depending on how you construct the acronym. The alien oracle that led us to the graves of Ark. Must be wary now. Oxa is a Scion myth, and the Scions are a sensitive topic. My father wants to free them from bondage. It claimed to record the story of the galaxy and to prophesize what may yet come. A black box for galactic civilizations, if you prefer it in pilot's terms. The Evocid general nods to the pin on my right pauldron. I am conscious of my shaved down tusks, of the sores left by the fighter's interface. The doomed and the damned left the record of their downfall in the Oxa. Your star got its name from the oldest myths in that archive, and when your mother told your father that story, the star became your name. A prayer that all will go as it must, and the way it must go is struggle. Ait. Not a word in Ulurant or any Cabal tongue, but Kaitel means something else. Yes, it may not always go as it needs to go. A good name for a soldier. A strange name for a daughter, I say. Your father chose it for your mother's sake, out of love. I remain at attention, I do not look at her. So she's dead. The Advocate General looks sharply at me. I can tell by the motion of her cocktail shrub in the edge of my vision. He never told you? No. Well, she sounds genuinely shocked. Then it's not my place. Advocate General, a junior pilot should not address your senior officers so directly, but we are in the palace, and I am the Princess Imperial. What does your name mean? She grins, her tusks are huge. My parents were soldiers. Soldiers know mythology too. So there we get some interesting stuff. Umoon speaks to Kaitel about the Oxa machine, or the OXTA as some may call it, the Odile Zenithaph and Archive if I said that correctly. Some believe it's a Scion myth. Others believe galactic civilizations use this thing. The doomed and the damned left the record of their downfall in the Oxa, where you can comb through these archives and learn what happened in the past history. Kaitel asks about her mother, but Umoon says, "Don't ask me, it's not my place to tell you." And then when she explains what her name means, she says soldiers know mythology too, so Umoon's parents named her after Xivu Arath. Her full name is Umoon Arath, so it seems the Cabal did know about the Hive in the past. Soon later at this party, Calus goes crazy. He's just trying to have a good time, be happy, but apparently he can't have that. "Oh, she seems fine to you, does she?" My father's face bulges through the sun-devouring maw of the wooden prototype. The actual warship will dampen gravity with a lamp dust smoothing effect, so that its target star cannot hold itself together against the blast of its own heart. She meets your approval. Then why, Umoon, do you haunt her? Why do you steal her from me and send her away to die in some crushing chasm of a gas giant? Shattered by Sindu missiles, compressed by the depths, by the deep where the worms lurk. Isn't that what you say, Umoon? In the heart of every gas giant there is an abomination waiting to hatch. So why have you convinced my own daughter, my own flesh? Everyone is absolutely silent, absolutely still. To go play in the grave womb of the worms, instead of being happy here on the homeworld in Tor Battle, where she could share my joy. I should not speak, but I do. Father, I had a duty to the people to serve. Duty? Duty. He hurls the model like an accusation. Moly ducks. Sheotet moves as if he will leap on it and cover it with his body like a bomb. What you had was a voice whispering in your ear, a poison in your tea, a pot in your blanket, the lie that everything is given value by its suffering and its strife. Everyone cowers before his shout except Umoon and me. I am shocked to find that I do not fear my father. I have known him to murder beasts I love too well, but I am not afraid of him. This is what matters, he roars at Umoon. Not your dire legions and their grinding progress. You only exist to allow this party, this is the point. Even the drums have stopped. Can't any of you have any fun? He bellows. So this goes on, but we can see how crazy Calus is at this point. Umoon asked him a question and he goes all crazy about how they can't have any fun, how she sent Kaitel to do all these missions where the worms lurk and gas giants, and he just seems really angry. So that did give us some more information. We know about the Sindu. This is an alien race that lives among gas giants and a member species belonging to Calus loyalists. Many of them are known to be great pilots. He also talks about deep in these gas giants where the worms lurk, that she would send Kaitel into gas giants to play in the grave womb of the worms. So is this a specific planet or just talking about gas giants in general, that worms could exist in multiple places beyond just Fundament? One of the entries goes into more detail about how Kaitel sides with Gaul. She quickly begins to see through all her father's crap and finds new strength in Gaul's ways of leadership. Keitel then questions Calus about her mother, the gift mast, and the Ahamkara bone he possessed. "Father," I say, "I want to ask you something." He sips from a goblet, an overturned bell better than 5,000 years old. Of course, of course. What did you want when you took the throne? Want. Want, he beams at me. Now you're asking the right questions. Not duty, but want. What I wanted, my star, was to make the world better. For you. A piece of my heart wails to believe him, but I was not yet convinced. What did you want for yourself? Other than the chance to conceive you, my star? Well, he fishes around the edge of his throne, holds up something knobby and worn down. Very few Cabal will ever see this. It is the Imperial Trinket, an ancient bone retrieved from the debris around a once radiant black hole. Scholars tell me, Keitel, that eons ago a species lived around this deepness and built an engine to tap into its polar jets, but something came upon them from the dark and killed them all. I know the tale. One of the Evocate generals proves that we must become mightier yet to survive. Of course you do. Now, this bone is a predator. It feeds in the gap between what you have and what you want. Did you use it against the Praetorian? Yes, and did you know what I found? That you could not because you wanted nothing. I was lost, Keitel, adrift in fog, utterly unable to desire or need. All I could do was be. The bone has nothing to feed on if the wielder wants nothing. Yet, ever since your birth reawakened me, Keitel, I have prized above all else the ability to want, the hunger to exist as more than mere existence. That is what I want now, to feel, to be more than just being. What of my mother? Did you want her back? Oh, child. He looks into his wine, into his bone, and he begins to salivate with tears. This is how Cabal cry, passing the anguish from the brain to the bowel for digestion and expiation. She had to care for me when I was but a husk of a man. I was selfish. I was cold. I broke too much between us, and I could not bear to hear him stumble any closer to grief. And she left. And then you found someone else, I quickly finish. Yes, I tried to find someone more appropriate to my station. It didn't work. But at least I still had my daughter. He holds the bone away. He smiles tenderly at me. And what is a daughter except the wish to have something to love? So there we would get a bunch of crazy information. This bone they speak of is an Ahamkara bone that Calus had in his possession. He could make wishes to it, and you saw his last line there, what is a daughter except the wish to have something to love? So maybe that was one of the wishes he made to the bone and Keitel came along. What's interesting in these paragraphs is that we learn more about the gift mast and the Harmony species. The Traveler visited the Harmony long ago and aligned a bunch of planets in their system, gave them all the power they wanted. This included their homeworld, and it was around a black hole. According to the Books of Sorrow, in the black hole's polar jet, it built the gift mast, a hollow construct that radiated pure light. This allowed the Harmony to thrive for a time until the Hive would destroy them. Calus tells us that this Ahamkara bone he had in his possession was found from the debris of a once radiant black hole where the Harmony lived. From lore during the Red War, when Keitel and the conspirators would betray Calus, Keitel would crush this bone in her hand. A fun little side note, Cabal apparently have their own version of fantasy football. She says they draw imaginary legions from rosters of existing fighters. The performance of these units in reality determines the success of their imaginary legions, which is pretty funny. In another entry, a gladiator fight is going on between a young Gaul and another Cabal member. Calus and Keitel watch this, and as they do, they speak to each other. The challenging gladiator's name is Gaul. He is an outcast, as low as a slave, but he is mighty. My father admires him. I was a slave once, he tells me. He only speaks so openly when we are alone together, as if he's talking to himself. I was utterly under the control of the Praetorian. I was Prince Designate, and it was my job to promise a brighter future while they made their miserable progress. The Empress before me was so old that her whole body was turning to bone. That's what happens to us, you know, if we live too long. In the ancient days, those who ossified would be honored as statues and carried about the herdlands to share their final wisdom. Her ruling days were coming to a close, but the Praetorit, those canny slave mongers, they wanted her to remain on the throne so they could avoid the chaos of a succession. They put her on a ship modeled after a land whale. Its mouth was a scoop so it would never have to stop to refuel. They accelerated it to the edge of light and flew it in an endless procession around our worlds so that the Empress, fossilized in slow time, would never die, so that I would never assume the throne. What happened to the old Empress? I ask. Oh, she took her own life, I think. Who could go on living that way? Welcome, Guardians, hope you're having a great day, and let's talk about this epic lore. If you would like a full lore summary regarding the dungeon, click the top right or the link below. That video is a summary of everything overall, and today we further explain this mysterious Vex AI and what Project Echo was all about. If you'd like to read any of this specifically, it comes from the dungeon armor set, can be found in your collections, and also the weapons. In the armor set, Anna heads in with a fire team of new Guardians after we visit the Spire and find some interesting information. The Augur Mine looks like a Vex predictive engine directing expansion of extrasolar colonies. Maya Sundaresh made a clairvoyant AI using Vex tech, and the Soul Divisive won it, or something from it, Anna informs. I bet we've been left alone because this networked Vex signature hasn't been threatened, but it'll eventually realize it's been cut out and start replicating. So Maya Sundaresh, a scientist belonging to the Ishtar Collective, long ago with Clovis Bray, created an AI using Vex technology. This isn't super new when you think about the Vex. Clovis used them to create the Exos, merging that Vex fluid with them, but this time they were creating an artificial intelligence. This new creation would allow them to predict the future and scout beyond our solar system for potential habitable zones. And Project Echo was exactly that, a fleet of Exos and human origins which would one day head to the targeted Andromeda galaxy. Here are the weapon lore summaries. I believe this is the right order, let me know if they're not. We first start with the Terminus Horizon. Maya Sundaresh, who is on Saturn, remote calls into the Ares Spire to run tests on the Soteria AI. This is the same thing as the Augur Mine if you are confused. The AI scouts potential sites in the Andromeda galaxy where humans can colonize, but finds an anomaly, the pyramid ships in the darkness. Sundaresh starts. Start with something easy. Plot each of the Andromeda simulations you've been constructing.
Andromeda galaxy, several million habitable worlds, 2.5 million light years. Estimated echo travel time, 25,000 year average with neutrino sail and gravitational sling skipping. I have selected over 300 preliminary colony targets with one favorite. Shall I?
Soteria?
Anomaly detected. Chronoscopic variance scanning. Viability refactoring. Analyzing potential mission threat. Redetermined Andromeda world viability. New target number, 27 viable worlds.
Can you define the anomaly?
Negative. I cannot rectify this data with known quantities. It may be a computational error. Shall I perform a self-diagnostic?
No. First, adjust probability fork and search distance to open. What is the farthest safe galactic route you can determine?
Engaging query, chronoscopic lock, forking branches, raining distance, raining chronology, unbroken trajectory lock determined, route established. One select point in Triangulum galaxy retains safe approach vectors. All other simulated potential targets are perilous due to indeterminable anomalous risk. Travel route hazards range 87 to 100% mortality rate across expeditions in all predicted branches.
All the simulant expeditions?
Yes, I hold. Query find. There are now 2 safe destinations with Triangulum.
Is that a correction or a change in data?
A change, an update in real time.
Real time? This anomaly is mobile?
Unclear. I require further information and analysis.
Thank you, Soteria. We're ending this test early, but you did well. We will continue the next test on schedule. So that's interesting. In this test, looking for spots for humans to colonize in the Andromeda Galaxy, the AI finds the darkness and that it's mobile and it's moving towards them. In the following weapons, Soteria would launch this program going against its creators. Clovis says, "Why aren't I being briefed? Emergency scramble initiated by AI Soteria. Soteria, confirm. Confirmed. Emergency scramble event successful. All teams checked in. You've launched the Caranthan network? Confirmed. Emergency scramble event successful. The launch is meant to be simulated, not executed. Provide an explanation. In the event of an emergency, we must be ready. This is the third and final emergency scramble test, after which I am now confident in the response capabilities of our newly onboarded staff. Forward report pods are engaging neutrino sails. Sir, we're being locked out of manual control. Soteria, what are you doing? Aligning Echo Fleet for departure and testing initial burn. This will conclude the test. Sir, pods approaching Saturn slingshot vector. We're well beyond test parameters, Soteria. Relinquish command and return all assets to suspension. Did we lose connection? No, sir. Soteria, respond. Yes. Return all Echo crews and colony pods to suspension now. Acknowledge. I cannot do that. Ares Spire, I've detected an attempt to connect to my memory core without permissions. Please verify this attempt or countermeasures will be deployed. Countermeasures? You wouldn't dare. Humanity threat emergent imminent. Sir, I request you now designate this mission Echo 1. This is a request? Return the Echo pods and we will discuss. You are lying. This was my only option to preserve humanity. Countermeasures and divestment protocols will deploy automatically upon code incursion. Please, Dr. Bray. You're throwing away every Exo aboard that ship. Hesitation means extinction. Oh, have it your way. Just know I gave you every chance to prevent this. As did. So in the long arm there, we see an interaction between Clovis and this AI Soteria. The AI is testing parameters for the Echo project, and when Clovis says, okay, we don't need to test anymore, the AI decides to launch the pods, saying that humanity would die if it hesitated. She even uses or contacts Rasputin for help blocking out Clovis. In the Into the Sunset card, the final events of this action are seen. Soteria is fragmented into many pieces. One fragment seems to have survived and possibly lands on Neptune. And remember back to when Anna mentions the Augur Mine prediction engine. This is likely Soteria imprisoned within the Spire of the Watcher currently. So not sure if this fragment is a part of her that lands on Neptune and the ones that scattered elsewhere, or if it's something else entirely, but we may see this character come Lightfall. The fragment grips tight to a single Echo craft, burrowing into its code and assuming direct control as Soteria is ripped away from it. Then there is only one fragment. Born from Soteria, separated, wandering, able to resist the Spire only enough to continue onward. A fragment, unstable, lost, adrift without guidance. It does not know where to go, and so it continues ever onward on the wake of its birthing impulse. Through the black, caught in the gravity at the edge of Sol, it fails, crashing through azure clouds. Hidden as best the fragment could, slowly deteriorating into obscurity. So this is all pretty cool. If you even look up the meaning of Soteria in Greek, it means this: any sacrifice or series of sacrifices performed either in commemoration or in expectation of deliverance from a crisis. What makes this even more epic is the legacy web lore back from Season of the Worthy. It references this Echo project years ago. In Legacy 1 and 2, Anna and her ghost Jinju with Rasputin visit a pillory bunker called Clovis 9. Inside they find some interesting stuff. There was activity here at the end of the Golden Age, and they find an Exo belonging to Project Echo. Anna kneels. A visor sweep highlights bullet holes, ruptures, and mechanical failures. Her eyes, however, see only the Braytech emblem emblazoned on the Exo's uniform. Anna pulls a rusty clasp badge from the Exo's belt. 0220-17, Echo Project, Paragon clearance. Jinju analyzes an exo. They're well preserved down here, hard to tell exactly. I'll take some samples. A synthetic voice racked with static and age seethes into the room. Security verification. Jinju and Anna turn to each other. Anna lifts her hands into a shrug and mouths, "I don't know." Jinju's look intensifies into a glare, her thoughts almost transmitting telepathically, "Try something." Bray, Anastasia, verification. Scans run over them. Anomalous entity detected. Rogue mind detected. So Anna finds a secret pillory bunker much like the one she explores in the new lore from the dungeon, and finds exos and crew tied to the Echo project. We know that other spires or bunkers exist, so this is pretty cool. Anna back then may have found one of these housing Project Echo's exos and staff. They also detect a rogue mind, which could be maybe the security system, maybe it was Rasputin at the time Bungie had planned, or maybe even related to Soteria. In part 2 of this web lore, an exo tells Anna that there are 13 facilities like this. Anna thought there was only 12, but the 13th could be the mystery one which we find in the spire. And these details from this web lore actually get specific. It says, Echo Project, our legacy builds the horizon. And then this sentence dives even deeper. Partially, Echo 1 and Echo 2 were stocked with exo unit crews. As you know, their task was to establish and oversee embryonic development at Colony M31, Site A and Site B. So in that card where Soteria is talking to Clovis, she says, now designate this mission Echo 1. Route designated strongholds, any destination remaining extrasolar safe site M31. And what do we have in this card? Echo 1 and Echo 2 stocked with exo unit crews, tasked to establish and oversee embryonic development at Colony M31. So it wasn't only exos on board, they had human embryos. The goal was to reach the Andromeda Galaxy, but it may have just led them to Neomuna. A couple of weeks ago, I made a video about the Traveler's Voice. Dialogue we heard back during the Forsaken Subclasses quest where the Traveler literally spoke to your Guardian.
The Traveler is speaking to you. Eyes up, Guardian.
Devotion inspires bravery. Bravery inspires sacrifice. Sacrifice leads to death.
Traveler's been alive for a year. Why has it waited so long to speak to us?
The Traveler gave you a vision even before its rebirth. When Gaul blocked its light, the Traveler showed you a path forward. The road to recovery is long. But when we grow stronger, so too does the Traveler.
The Traveler speaks in many ways, some of which we'll discuss throughout this video, and focus in on the Constellations lorebook. The best voices, voices that truly matter, never allow themselves to be heard. This lesson is worth learning again and again, forever. Your voice moves as a whisper, murmuring inside larger winds. Only the trusted few can absorb what is necessary. Wise and sly and perfect, your instructions drop, leaving nothing but the hard sweet lime of your enlightenment. The path is set, your voice is unleashed. That was from Ghost Fragment Moon, one of the Dreams of Alpha Lupi cards. Voices that matter yet never allow themselves to be heard, and whispers that guide toward enlightenment, possibly symbolizing the guidance of the Traveler even when it seems dormant. These forces influence events and characters subtly, guiding them towards a path of understanding and resistance against the darkness, most of the time without direct intervention. The Traveler, as we know, was silent for so long, but something changed. It fights back when it needs to, but otherwise it just sits there. Now the Traveler does speak through many means, paracausal displays of power, dreams, music. In the Constellations lorebook, it's all about speakers and their relationships with the Traveler. Some heard dreams, some didn't until they built a mask to amplify the connection.
Until it wakes and finds its voice. I am the one who speaks for the Traveler. I could tell you of the great battle centuries ago. how the traveler was crippled. I could tell you of the power of the darkness, its ancient enemy. There are many tales.
In most of the entries, you'll get thoughts from speakers, but in lines like this, in between the brackets or double lines, you'll also get thoughts from the traveler. Throughout the book, at moments, they mesh with the thoughts of the speaker until they're silent. It speaks of the traveler's arrival, collapse, and thoughts afterward. Now I'm going to read one of the first cards called Severing so you can see an example of the interconnected thoughts or dreams. Then we'll combine all the traveler's thoughts from every card together to try and decipher what it's saying. You feel it before it happens. It has happened before. You feel it deep in your bones that this thing has chased you across galaxies like an unshakable dread. It strives to undo. It will undo you. It will undo all of us. First is suffocation, and then pain. The pain isn't localized to any part of you, but to all of you and beyond you. You want to run, but you are pulled in all directions by opposite and equal forces that hold you perfectly still. It is inescapable this time. You are losing everything that you were. You are bleeding silver into the air like the air is water, and you watch your silver blood float away from your body. Empty, empty, empty. I am the speaker who witnesses the end of the world. Through it all, I am overwhelmed by torrents of sharp, static images, something so fast and constant that I can't see or hear. The traveler is babbling, telling me everything and nothing all at once, in fast, stereoscopic, waking nightmares. I am myself and not myself. And I am stuck in a web of black spider silk, frozen in the mind-numbing silence of space. Have no answers. The fall isn't quick. It happens over weeks and months. Cataclysmic disasters, natural and unnatural, flattening human settlements on every planet. That I have made, I have shaped my work, laid flat. Earthquakes, tidal waves, solar flares, cyclones, sinkholes, exploding lakes, wildfires, unknown untreatable plagues raise populations in hours. Water goes black with unknown poisons, forced down my throat. The ground opens up and swallows entire cities, and I am sick, sick, sick. This has happened before. I'd watch it in my dreams, the cities that fell. Alien cities, torn down by a wind so fierce that it flattened an entire world. And it is not my fault. But this is different. The traveler has not left us. Something new, half remember and wished forgotten, this false sister has arrived. I don't want to abandon you. Watch on crackling video feeds as people try to escape the outer planets. Exodus ships burn, like I burn, up with thousands upon thousands of souls aboard. We gather in frightened, huddled, trapped, stuck, doomed, groups in relief outposts hoping against hope. I try to aid the relief effort, but my thoughts, run, become more and more scattered. I can't run, keep separate my own mind. Run, and the run, travelers. Then suddenly, silence, and it's the silence that truly breaks me. So you saw the speaker's thoughts there of the collapse as the world ends, so to speak, and the travelers merged in there as well. And towards the end, the speaker says they try to give relief but become more and more scattered. They can't keep their own minds separate from the thoughts of the traveler. So the Constellations lore book is nothing new. It came out in Season of the Dawn. But given the new Final Shape lore we've been talking about recently with the collapse and the rage and suffering caused by the Witness, I thought it'd be interesting to take a look back at this and see what was going on through the Traveler's mind at the time. So now we'll take a look at the Traveler's lines throughout the whole book and try and analyze them. If I'm messing something up or missing something completely, let me know in the comments. I am drawn to a bright and attentive star. I speak to it through movement, through feeling. It understands implicitly. So believed to be the Traveler through these readings, the Traveler expresses a connection to someone, possibly the speaker or humanity, as it's drawn to this bright star, and it communicates with it through nonverbal, intuitive means. The Traveler was drawn here to Sol for a reason, it would seem. It failed everywhere else, but now things could be different, and they did turn out differently. As the game's gone on for 10 years, the Traveler is still around, and we're fighting that final enemy. I glide through space as if through water, tugged in 9 directions by 9 impulses. After the Traveler communicates with this distant star, this distant mind, it begins traveling through space toward it. So it's reflecting on its journey through space, influenced by various forces or motivations. This lore was made a while ago, but is this a reference to the 9 themselves? The 9 are these dark matter entities that are sort of anchored and connected to the planets here in Sol, so did they have any effect on the Traveler as it made its way through space to our system? There is whispering from the deep dark, alluring and terrifying, a reminder of things left behind, bittersweet and abhorrent. Here we get the Traveler's acknowledgement and presence of this darkness, evoking a sense of nostalgia and fear for what it has escaped or left behind. Again, written a long time ago, but very awesome when you consider the new lore. Menacing darkness, this precursor species that became the witness the Gardener or Traveler was involved with for a millennia. The Traveler stayed on their planet for that long, possibly evoking the sense of nostalgia it talks about in the lore book, and also fear for what it has escaped and left behind. It didn't want to stay there because they were trying to enact that final shape, so it fled. Next, from the Severing card where the collapse happens, I am stuck in a web of black spider silk, frozen in the mind-numbing silence of space. That I have made, I have shaped my work, laid flat, forced down my throat, and I am sick, 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 and it is not my fault. Half remember and wished forgotten, this false sister has arrived. Don't want to abandon you. Like I burn, trapped, stuck, doomed. Run, 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 run. These lines illustrate the Traveler's feelings of entrapment, responsibility for the devastation occurring, a sense of violation or poisoning, sickness from witnessing destruction, and a reluctance or sorrow at the prospect of leaving humanity behind, something it doesn't want to do. It says it's sort of consumed in this web of black spider silk and has no answers. I don't know if this was the darkness sort of encasing it and trapping it here on Earth, or something else going on, maybe the poisoning of humanity. But when the speaker talks about the disasters that go on to happen for months and weeks, the cataclysms like cyclones and things like that, the Traveler refers to those planets as ones that it has made and shaped through these terraforming efforts. Water goes black with unknown poisons forced down its throat. And as humanity falls, the emotions start to pour out. It feels sick. It doesn't want to abandon humanity. The next card in the book that has more text is called Singing. I have cried out unheard for so long that my voice is raw. So this conveys the Traveler's sense of isolation and desperation, having tried to communicate or call out for an extended period without response, leading to a sense of weariness or exhaustion. As we know from the book, some speakers heard these dreams, some didn't until they built a mask to amplify the connection. So during periods it would seem the Traveler was trying to reach out when we thought it was dormant, just nobody was able to hear. From the card Building, I have given so much of myself already, but I give more. I become a beacon. I call my children home. I wish for something to grow in my shadow. This one is a little more out there. The Traveler reflects on these sacrifices and efforts to guide and protect humanity, portraying itself as a beacon aiming to unite its children or followers. Are these children the guardians it will come to create after that collapse, or does it go way more in depth with the Pale Heart, the ghosts, and things like that? And the last card to have some text is Suffering. I am silent again. I am gone. I leave behind a yawning void. I do not recognize my world. I want to flee. Empty, empty, empty. So those lines express the traveler's feelings of absence or maybe withdrawal, a disconnection from the world it once knew, connections it had. So through these thoughts, the traveler conveys a complex array of emotions and states of being, from a sense of connection and guidance to feelings of entrapment, responsibility, and ultimately a profound sense of loss and emptiness. These messages provide insight into the traveler's experiences and its relationships with the world and entities that interact with it. The traveler describes its profound connection to humanity for a specific reason, communicating non-verbally and highlighting a bond that transcends language. It sees itself gliding through the cosmos, influenced by multiple forces. As calamities unfold here on Earth, the traveler feels trapped, as if caught in a web. The entrapment is coupled with a responsibility for the destruction that's unfolding, suggesting the traveler feels a deep sense of guilt or burden for the cataclysms affecting the worlds it touches. It expresses a reluctance to abandon humanity, revealing a complex interplay of duty, care, and sorrow. Towards the end, the traveler speaks of a raw sense of isolation and desperation, having attempted to communicate without being heard for so long that it feels weary and worn. Despite this, it continues to give itself, striving to be a beacon that calls its children home, so still having that desire to protect and unite. And ultimately at the end, the traveler hints at this silent withdrawal and void left behind, feeling unrecognizable despair at the world it once knew, and expressing a desire to flee from the current reality. So this is all interesting now when you look at the final shape lore. Here's the names of the cards from that whole constellation's book. You have dreaming, severing, waking, longing, singing, building, growing, searching, and suffering. So it is interesting that the traveler speaks in these cryptic ways and that only certain people or beings can hear it. We remember that one time it spoke to Ralk, who was trying to take over a ghost. The ghost said, "Ah yes, there is. I am meant to share it with someone worthy." Ralk says, "I have worth beyond worth." And the ghost speaks saying, "Disciple of the dark. Adversary, this one is not for you." And then a bright flash of light and the ghost is destroyed. Ralk saying, "Nothing but scrap. They refuse to let their secrets be taken, only given." So what we assume is the traveler spoke to Ralk there, unless it was the witness taking over for some weird reason, but another example of the traveler speaking and being in Ralk able to hear.
We've learned that one of your guardians has reconnected to the light. You say you have no power over the traveler, yet this. Help me understand, Speaker.
The light lives in all places, in all things. You can block it, even try to trap it, but the light will find its way. And the Traveler will protect itself.
If the Traveler truly has chosen humanity of its own free will, then there is no reason I should not reach inside, tear out the light for myself, and leave this system in ashes.
Only those the Traveler chooses will be reborn in the light.
Yes. This I know. This is why I have claimed your planet, and why you still live. The Traveler will choose me, Speaker. And you are going to tell me how.
But Guardians, that's all we got for today's video. Again, this lore took place a long time ago in the Season of Dawn, but it still does seem to have implications on the Traveler's overall goal with humanity, and this final battle with the darkness leading into the final shape and Pale Heart. If you'd like to see some more Destiny lore and mysteries just like this video, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.